So let's just imagine for a second. This jar is your life. Right now it's empty, a total blank slate. So here's the big question, the one we all have to answer. To make your life feel truly full, and I mean meaningful, what's the very first thing you should put in it? Well, the answer, at least according to this classic analogy, is surprisingly simple. You've got to start with the big rocks. These are the absolute foundation for a life that actually means something. Okay, so big rocks. What are we even talking about here? Well, think of them as your non-negotiables. We're talking about your family, your health, and that's both mental and physical, right? The dreams that light a fire in you and those deep, deep relationships that hold you up. These are the things that if you lost everything else, would still make your life feel full. And that right there is the whole key. When you put your big rocks in first, you're not just crossing your fingers and hoping they'll fit in later. No way. You're actively making sure they have a permanent, unshakable place in your life. You're building everything else on top of that solid foundation. Okay, so we've got our big rocks in the jar. They're secure. But let's be real. Life isn't only about the big, profound things, is it? There are all these other pieces to the puzzle. We've still got to deal with, well, the pebbles and the sand. So take a look at the jar now. Even with the big rocks in there, it's not totally full, is it? You can see all these gaps, these little empty spaces between them. So what do we do about those? Aha! That's where the pebbles come in. The pebbles represent all the other important things in your life. You know, your job, your house, your car. And look, they definitely matter. But here's the crucial difference. They are secondary. They are not the absolute bedrock of your happiness and well-being. And then, of course, you've got the sand. The sand is all the small stuff. I'm talking about the little things that can so easily just swallow up our time if we're not careful. Think about it. The endless to-do lists, the mindless scrolling on the internet, all those tiny little things that are constantly fighting for our attention. And here's the magic. The pebbles in the sand, they just pour in and fill up all those remaining gaps. They settle right in around your big rocks. And suddenly, the whole picture is complete. Everything fits. But, and this is a big but, only if you do it in the right order. Which, of course, brings us to the cautionary tale. We have to look at what happens when we get that order completely, disastrously wrong. And honestly, it's something a lot of us do without even realizing it. So, let's ask that critical question. What happens if you start with the sand and pebbles? What if you fill your life up with all the small stuff, all the material things, before you even think about your big rocks? Well, the outcome is pretty stark. If you start with the sand and pebbles, that jar fills up so fast. And the result? It's kind of devastating, really. There is literally no room left for your big rocks. They just won't fit. It's impossible. But when you get the order right, suddenly there's a place for everything. And the reason is simple, right? Our time and our energy, they're not infinite. We only have so much. So if you spend all of it on the small stuff first, you're going to miss out on the things that actually make life great. It's just simple math. But hang on, the story isn't quite finished. Just when you think the jar, filled the correct way, is absolutely packed, there's one final, kind of surprising ingredient that adds this whole other layer to the lesson. Okay, so let's go back to our jar. We've got the big rocks in, the pebbles are settled, the sand has filled every nook and cranny. I mean, it looks totally full, right? Filled to the brim. So the obvious question is there really room for anything else? The answer is yes. It's a cup of water. You can still pour in some water and it'll find its way into the tiniest little spaces you didn't even know were there. So what does the water represent? It's those simple moments of joy. You know, that cup of coffee with a friend, a shared laugh with someone you love, just a small fleeting moment of real connection. And this really brings home such a beautiful final point. No matter how busy your life seems, no matter how jam-packed your jar is with all your responsibilities, big and small, there is always room for a little bit of kindness, a little bit of joy. Okay, so this is a great story, a powerful metaphor, but how do we actually use it? How do we apply this to our real lives? Let's break it down into a simple, actionable plan. All right, here's your game plan. Step 1, you need to sit down and really, truly identify your big rocks. What are your non-negotiables? Get clear on that. Step 2, take care of yourself, your mental and physical health. That is always a big rock. And step 3, be intentional about spending quality time with the people you love. Don't just hope it happens. Schedule it, plan it, make it happen. Because when you get right down to it, life isn't about being busy. I mean, Anyone can be busy. It's not about having a jar just full of sand, making it look like your life is full. The real goal is to have a meaningful life. So, let's wrap this up with the core message, the final call to action. Put your rocks in first and make your days valuable. It's that simple. And really, the only question left for you is, what are the big rocks you're going to place in your jar?
Start with this big question, because I'm sure you've felt this at some point. You work so hard for a goal. You finally get there, and that feeling of fulfillment you were expecting, it's just not there. It's this weird kind of emptiness. So why does that happen? Well, this simple story offers a pretty incredible answer.
So our story kicks off with a hero. And on the outside, this guy has it all. To everyone else, he is the picture of success. But inside, he feels like something's missing. He's been so focused on just getting to the finish line that he completely missed the point of the race itself.
To try and figure out this emptiness, he decides to go on a long, hard journey to find a wise man. He's hoping this man can finally tell him the secret to being truly content. So he gets there, and he asks the wise man for the key, for the one secret to true happiness. But the answer he gets, well, it's not some profound piece of advice. It's a task. A really strange and, frankly, seemingly pointless task. The wise man just hands him this old wooden pot that's full of cracks. And the instructions are simple. For a whole week, his only job is to fill this pot with water from the stream and carry it all the way back to the well. Easy enough, right? And so, day after day, our hero starts his new job. But what he thought was going to be a simple chore, it quickly turns into this daily lesson in just absolute frustration and failure. You can just imagine this question spinning around in his head. He's putting in all this effort, but every single step feels like he's failing. All that hard work, all that water, just leaking out onto the dusty ground. I mean, what was the point? And this right here really gets to the core of his frustration. The goal was so clear: get a full pot of water to the well. But the reality, every single day, was arriving with a pot that was totally empty. It was the perfect recipe for feeling like a complete failure. You know, it wasn't just the physical work, the sweat, and the exhaustion. The emotional drain was way worse. He got totally convinced that all of this effort was adding up to absolutely nothing. So, on the very last day, he is just beat. He's about to give up entirely. He goes to the wise man to basically admit defeat, but the wise man just calmly asks him to do one more thing. And instruction is so simple. The wise man just says, "Look back." He tells him to stop staring at the empty pot, the thing that represented all his failure, and to actually see the path he'd been walking all week. And when he does, in that single moment of just turning his head and looking back, his entire world flips upside down. He is absolutely stunned, because that dry, dusty, boring path he'd been trudging along every day wasn't dry and dusty anymore. It had completely transformed into this beautiful, vibrant corridor of flowers and life. And this is the big reveal. The wise man explains that all the water leaking from the cracks in the pot, the very thing he saw as his constant failure, that's what brought this entire path to life. His imperfection was the source of all this incredible beauty. So, what's the big idea here? Let's unpack the final, powerful wisdom of this story. You know, this story is really teaching us a profound lesson, that we are all, in our own way, a little bit like that cracked pot. We all have flaws, we all have imperfections. But these aren't weaknesses we should be ashamed of. They are very often the exact things that let us have a unique and beautiful impact on the world. So the whole point is to shift our focus. Meaning isn't just about reaching the destination with a full pot, a perfect score. No, the true meaning is found in what grows along our path because of our journey. Your flaws, your struggles, they might be watering a garden for someone else, a garden you can't even see yet. So the invitation here is to just embrace the entire journey, right? Your shortcomings, your stumbles, they are not signs that you've failed. They are essential parts of what makes your path so uniquely and beautifully yours. Because ultimately, the journey is the destination. It's not about arriving with a perfect full pot. It's about all the life you nurture along the way. So I'll just leave you with this question. What beautiful garden are your cracks watering right now?